Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for my client Michelle's vlog, and we started the week off with bench press against chains. She got up to 135 with the lighter chains, and that's the bar weight, that's not counting the chains. Of course, they mostly unloaded the bottom, not completely. Notice she's still a little slow off the chest, and that's to be expected because we only recently took her over to a wider grip. For a very long time she's been doing close grip only, well before she hired me, due to some shoulder issues, which we've discussed in previous vlogs. But now I've gotten her shoulders healthy enough and strong enough, in spite of there being some cartilage and stuff missing from surgeries, that she can do it and it's pain free. So we're going to continue to work it up. We're going to get her stronger at all the wider grip stuff, build the appropriate muscles involved. So our first supplemental lift is, of course, a floor press. Big fan of the floor press. Use it a lot for a lot of my lifters. I don't use it enough myself. Probably a mistake on my part, because most of my strongest benchers make fairly heavy use of it. Sorry guys, here I've been slightly hiccuping. I just drank a bunch of water before recording this. I'm just going to run with it. All right, so after the floor press, we do JM presses, and yes, that is a normal 45-pound bar, and she has now added small plates to it. Again, all the band press downs we did to develop her triceps, and her, building up to 150 plus pound closed grip bench has given her very strong triceps. So she is able to very quickly perform this exercise with a lot of weight. And I know some of the guys out there who aren't big benchers are, again, probably looking at this going, I remember starting with the empty bar. Yep. She's got strong triceps. Got a lot of tricep training history. So she's going to tend to be good at this due to all that closed grip benching, right? She's going to tend to be good at it. And we want to keep it that way. We want to get better there. All right. Afterwards, we do a lot of our back work. I've got her doing chin-ups first. And I don't have a lot of people do a lot of chin. Some of my clients do, some don't. She's good at chin-ups. They don't seem to inflame anything, so I'm letting her do them for a phase. We'll probably work pull-ups and stuff back in later. If we start to see any inflammation at all, that bicep insertion, or they bother the shoulders. And as much as I like a lot of these movements, I've always said in the past, chin-ups and cheek curls and stuff can build really big biceps. The issue is they beat the tendons up if we're not very careful, right? We have to be careful of those supine movements, particularly for your older lifters. The reason so many bodybuilders always have their elbows wrapped up and always have tendon pain around the elbows, it's a whole lot of reasons. That's probably one of them. All right, afterwards we did inverted rows. Okay, so we're rolling with the inverted rows because we wanted a little bit of variation. There's always concern of overuse because I run a lot of training volume for her. And for those who don't understand why, I've previously discussed in detail that women can handle higher training volumes relative to men. They just can. There's research on it. We know that that's the case. It's just something for coaches to keep in mind. All right, afterwards, we, of course, do lateral raises, and it's very obvious that she's gained muscle. If you go back and look at the previous vlogs a few months ago, she is successfully gaining muscle. She hasn't really gained any significant body weight. So we're seeing some good recomp. So she is gaining muscle. We're gaining hypertrophy. It's one reason she's been getting stronger. Because again, it's what we need. We need to fill out her weight class, and then she's going to trim down after this next meet. She wants to lean out, get abs back again, and then we'll lean bulk her up a bit from there. But she's definitely made gains, and you see it in the entire shoulder area. And I'll probably discuss the delts a little more in the vlog. We have the lower body to deal with. So squatting against light bands, she had a good number here. I'm a little concerned with the depth, but that seems to happen a lot when we do bands. And it's not to do with the fact that she can't hit depth, because she's hit some pretty deep squats lately. And we're also doing really well with the goblet squats. It has to do with the nature of banded squats. They jerk you down a little harder. The eccentric can be very difficult, so it tends to pull you out of your ideal bar paths if you're not careful. And that can mean things like hitting your normal depths and stuff can actually be difficult with bands. until you get used to them. And so I need to run some phases for her of doing speed work against bands, right? So that she gets a feel for what it's like to be able to sit back against really heavy band tension. Afterwards, we of course do the safety bar good mornings, because again, I want more posterior chain. Posterior chain is limiting her. As you guys notice, one of the few supplemental lifts we do for the interior side is these goblet squats coming up. And to put it in perspective, that's a 90-pound dumbbell. She is doing 3 sets of 10 right now with a 90-pound dumbbell, and she is getting several inches below parallel. That's pretty much an ass to grass wide stance squat. Okay, her quads are pretty strong right now. We're very limited by posterior chain. So glutes, hamstrings, all of that stuff are what tend to hold us back on her big lifts. It's one reason her deadlift's actually good. I mean, she's over 300, but relative to her, say her squatting and benching, her deadlift is probably the weakest of her big three. And it just simply comes down to needing more posterior chain, right? Glutes and hamstrings, right? And so we put a higher priority on those. So notice we do 3 exercises. 3 exercises for those with only 1 real exercise for the quads. And so we do good mornings, we do these glute ham raises, and then we do reverse hyperextensions, because these are areas that we want to continue to make the most gains with. Although she's getting quite strong now at the reverse hypers. I think she had said on this last workout, she'll be coming up later in the vlog, she's up to 190 pounds on these for her work sets. So we're actually getting stronger at them, which is good because I find that they're one of the best glute exercises, right? I can get really strong on reverse hypers and then come in having not done glute bridges or something in 6 or 7 months and just bang out really, really heavy weights on them as long as I'm strong on the reverse hypers. So I find the glute carryover is phenomenal. It's one of the first exercises, definitely the first exercise that ever gave me glute DOMs. So there's a reason I've now bought 2 reverse hyperextensions. They're worth it. All right, up next, speed bench day. We're doing dynamic effort against chains. We're going to be working in bands here in the near future. Right, so we're going to run some waves of bands now that she's gotten used to doing these with chains. Then, of course, we're doing some dumbbell benching to continue to work her pecs, because all that closed grip benching has left her pecs is, lagging a little bit relative to some of her other pressing muscles in terms of strength. So we do need to work on that. And the dumbbells do allow us to get into that deep stretch position. It takes us into a lengthened position of the muscle, which if we've been lacking is actually a really good time to make some gains there, because it's a little bit of a novel training response. So again, if we haven't done anything that puts them into a seriously lengthened position, the gains will come a little quicker. And again, lengthened positions do tend to have the most potential for hypertrophy. And we get that on the flat bench. It's just that it's a little more extreme there. And then, of course, JM presses to keep those triceps strong and growing, even though you could tell her triceps are in no way limiting her bench. She locks out really fast. She's slow where we would expect for someone who needs a little more shoulder and a little more pec. And so why do we do all the delt work? Because we'll see the delt work in here. Mainly because the raw bench. On a raw bench, most people, not everyone, tend to be a little slower off the chest. If you're missing raw benches right off the chest and it's not your lats limiting you, it is very potentially your anterior deltoids. So we do a little bit of extra shoulder work just to ensure that, right? Just to ensure that we continue to grow the anterior deltoids, which gives us more power out of the bottom. All right, so here we have the chin-ups again. So we do chins, and then we do some inverted rows. And then you guys will notice we do the plate front raises. I'm a big fan of front raises. And I used to not be. And I used to always say many years ago, I used to actually have that bodybuilder mindset. You'll see a lot of bodybuilders will say, well, I don't bother to do any front delts because all this other pressing works them. And the reality is I find that it carries over to the bench so well, particularly people who are weak at the bottom. Same thing with all this back work. Thicker lats will help you out of the bottom of the bench. And I've discussed in detail why in the past. You will see people who argue biomechanics and create really fantastic arguments about why lats don't help on the raw bench, and they explain how that goes with a shirt and everything. The problem is they're wrong. Their explanations sound phenomenal, and if you were to hook up EMGs, they would absolutely be right. But lats are not about muscle activation. Again, that's a whole nother topic though, isn't it? So we do plate front raises. A lot of my people do this on bench, particularly lifters who are weak out of the bottom of the bench. If they're slow out of the bottom, I'm going to tend to prescribe front raises or incline benching. She can't incline bench, so that makes it a very simple choice. Her shoulder will still not allow incline benching. All right, and then we finish the week off with dynamic effort lower day, which right now is box squats against chains, using a straight bar at the moment for this wave instead of the safety bar. And I'm having her do a little bit more of the straight bar because, again, we have a meet coming up, right? We've got a meet coming up. I want her to practice getting that straight bar in her hands, although I may run some waves of the safety bar because her one meet did get delayed. We had to push back to a different meet. So it might be time to work some waves back into that safety bar just to save the energy on her shoulders. But, for my power lifters, a lot of them, particularly power lifters who don't have a decade of experience, I really like to do a lot of straight bar for their dynamic effort work, just for the carryover to get used to that bar. My people who don't compete in powerlifting, I'll run them on safety bars all day long. Because we're not going to compete on the back squat. So there's a difference with that. You guys may notice if you'll talk to some of my clients who admit they're my clients or see their social media, it seems a lot of people are not aware that some of my clients have social media because they don't have vlogs, and that's okay. Or guys like Mikey or even Emma, people will notice you have them do a lot of speed work with the safety bar. Like, yeah, because they don't have any meets coming up. They're not competing in powerlifting. Like one of my strong men, we do a ton of safety bar and transformer bar stuff. Why? Because he's a strong man and he's not going to be tested on the back squat, and those lifts will really help build the upper back and stuff using those. So, we do tend to do that for some of my athletes because I'm not as worried about them getting used to getting that bar in position over and over. So some of that depends on what I'm doing, but by that same token, I could just say strong is strong. I could train people on nothing but safety bars and still get them elite if we just get them big enough and strong enough. But in this case, I do want a lot of these lifters to get some experience under the straight bar. We definitely want to get some practice until they get a certain number of years of training. Guys like Mike has been training, he's been lifting for 12 or 13 years now. Okay, and yes, he's made substantial gains since he hired me. But, it's a little different. He has plenty of practice under that straight bar. There she is doing 90-pound goblet squats again. And then, of course, we finish off the week with our glute ham raises and reverse hyperextension. She added some weight. She said this morning before she did this workout, she's like, Coach, because she actually called me up. She's like, Coach, these are too easy. Can I use a plate? I'm like, yeah, you can use a plate. We'll start using bands and chains in the near future on these. Which she got excited about because, again, something new. We learn a new thing. And you guys have seen me in the past a few times use bands or chains on the glute ham raise. I used to love to use chains on it way back in my 20s. My gym had one and it had some chains. I used to love to mess with chains on it. I used to use chains for everything just because chains are cool. Even when I didn't fully understand 20 years ago, 15 years ago, why we used the chains, at least to the degree that I do now. But I like chains and stuff on those. And then we finish off with the reverse hyperextensions, which she's now up to 190 for her work sets. So I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.